Man, I had to do this again and follow that. Gosh. But my name is Johnathan Lefler, and I serve as the student pastor here. And man, we are so glad that you are here this morning. We are in a new series this summer called Staycation, which actually is becoming more real and realer as the prices keep going up at the gas pump. I literally got change back the other day, and the guy goes, "Well, that's 2 gallons of gas." And I said, "That's about the truth." All right. I cried the other day when I had to fill my truck up, but it looks like a bigger grocery bill than ever. But besides that, I'm glad that you're here. We are in this series talking about what it means to stay in different subjects of our Christian life as we pursue this staycation this morning. I was thinking about my vacations as a kid, and we took some vacations to Minnesota and California. I grew up on the West Coast, so summer to us was the greatest time because in Seattle it rains nonstop, and the summer was the time where we played sports because that's about the only time it didn't get rained out. So we'd play sports through the summer the most time, but I was thinking about the memories when we didn't go on vacation. But what I would do, I thought about some of the moments that, I'd do bike jumps with my friends, and we would think we'd get so much air, but really the reality is you probably could slide a credit card underneath it. That's how much air we got, but we still thought we were Dave Mira and all those BMX guys you saw on ESPN. But we had some great times. You'd run through sprinklers. My favorite was the crocodile slip and slide, where you run, you slide, you hit the bump, and you take a ride right through the crocodile's mouth until PETA shut that down. But bad joke, sorry. But guys, thank you. Thanks for this reassurance. Appreciate that. This orange stuff up here bothers me. I'm on the red team for Explosion Camp, sorry. But, yeah, the winning team. All right, but I remember that we used to run through sprinklers, drink out of garden hoses. Those were the good old days. My favorite, though, activity of summer was playing home run derby with a wiffle ball and a wiffle bat. And not just any bat, it had to be the yellow one, all right? It's like this round, but it's tough, right? And I would bust through wiffle balls left and right. But I love baseball, and so my favorite thing in the summer was to watch the home run derby. And so I would take notes, I would watch guys, I would imitate every player that I could. So when I did this, I was every player, right? And so I grew up with the likes of Albert Bell, Juan Gonzalez, Ivan Rodriguez, Mike Piazza, Jose Canseco, Frank Thomas, the good era of baseball. But I also would be these guys at first because I would go from my least favorite to my favorite players, right? And so I would get through these guys until I got to my second favorite player. Since I grew up in Seattle, I got to watch the great Ken Griffey Jr. play baseball. And I would sit there and I would imitate him. So I would get up there and I get that little swagger he got, and I would swing the pretty swing that he did just like that. He'd lay it and watch it. And I would do this for hours and hours. Then I would get to my favorite player, who was Kirby Puckett. All right, not many people know that. Braves fans probably hate him from the 91 World Series when Game 6, he hit the game-winning home run and charged like this around the bases to Game 7. And then Game 7, he makes the great catch on the Metrodome plastic wall to win the World Series for the Twins. Sorry about that. That's just my home roots. But I love Kirby Puckett, and I would imitate Kirby Puckett to everything, and I would have everything Kirby Puckett. Any baseball card, I ripped open the packets, and if I got Kirby Puckett, I would just scream, right? I would go excited. I had Kirby Puckett memorabilia. I even made my grandma send me Kirby Puckett pancake mix to Seattle because that's how much I love Kirby Puckett. And I would tell my mom, it has to look like Kirby Puckett for me to eat pancakes, all right? I love this guy, so I would imitate him, and he would get the bat swing, and he would do that, and I would do that for hours and hours and hours. And these guys would go up, and they would all do well until the greatest hitter came up. And no better home run derby champion, if you have his rookie card, congratulations, it's very hard to find, was better than Johnathan Lefler, all right? He would get up and he would crush them, and I would hit them into my mom's rose bushes, which I'm sure she loved. She never complained, so she probably did to my dad. But anyways, I would destroy the rose bushes because that's how good of a home run hitter I was in my own mind, right? As you can see, that didn't work out. I'm here, right, not playing baseball. But I was thinking about that, and you're thinking, what the heck does that have to do with what we're talking about today? But I think about that in my life because those were some of the purest moments of my life. Because as a kid, I had no care in the world except I wanted to crush home runs, right? I didn't care anything else. I just wanted to make sure that Johnathan Lefler won every time, and sometimes he would humble himself and lose to Kirby Puckett, all right? But the reality was, that's all I cared about. That was all my thoughts. That's all I didn't worry about. And I thought about our students and our kids and the things that they're facing nowadays. And it's crazy. The world we live in, man, I am so glad I grew up in the era that I did. Because when I think about my life and my childhood, it was so pure. And this morning I want to talk about that. As what I want to talk about this is, how do we stay pure in our Christian life? Because it's not a big subject that we talk about a lot. It's really kind of one of those that doesn't get mentioned much, because what is really pure in this world anymore? And so it's one of those things, but in Matthew 5:8, Jesus makes a big deal about it. He puts it in a certain spot in the Bible that's very important. It's called the Beatitudes. And he says this: blessed are those who are pure at heart. Blessed are those who are pure at heart. What a blessing that we receive from Jesus. But what is that blessing? That's what I want to tackle this morning is, one, what does it mean to be pure at heart? But two, how are we contaminated from the world to how do we change to be pure at heart? And what are these blessings that we receive by being pure at heart? If you were to walk through the grocery store like I did Friday, and you would see that every product is now striving to be the purest product possible. All right, if you look through the water aisle, there's about 6 of them that tell you they're the purest water. I even saw a commercial, no joke, Friday night that said our water comes from the purest clouds in the sky. Whatever that means, I don't know where you get a purest cloud. I think all clouds are the same, but whatever, it doesn't make me get their water. So maybe they stand out there with a certain cloud that they know and they hold it. I don't know. But you have the purest chocolate, you have the purest milk, you have the purest every product. Everybody is striving to be the purest. And if you were to do what everybody does now and not pull out that big dictionary, but take Google up and see what the definition of pure is, it says uncontaminated, no impurities. It's pure. And I think about our life today, we're contaminated from so many different directions. I mean, all you have to do is flip on the TV and you get 20 different directions, all the information is processed at us so fast. All you do is click on your computer and you can get anything you want in the world. Anything you type one wrong word in, you get things you don't want too. But the truth is that we are contaminated left and right in this world. And that wasn't God's intentions when we were born. His intentions for us was to be pure at heart the whole time. But the thing that entered the world was called sin. And sin changed our hearts. Because the minute that sin enters our hearts, we're now contaminated. And Jesus was very specific about what he says about being pure and where to be pure, because everything starts at the heart. If you were to look in the Bible, and you can Google this because I did this last night, but the heart is mentioned 826 times in the Bible. The brain is mentioned none. Because everything starts in the heart. Our emotions come from the heart. Our actions come from the heart. Our thoughts come from the heart. Because everything we've put in our mind and our minds come from our heart, because that's where our feelings come from. And Jesus knew how important this was, and that's why 826 times they mention the heart. He talks about loving God with all your heart, loving God with this. Because if your heart isn't kicking, you ain't kicking, is the truth. But what is that beat that drives us to be pure? What is that beat that drives us to strive to be pure at heart? I think if you were to take this glass of water up here and you think about, well, I don't think I'm that contaminated by this world. I think a little bit here is a little bit good. But if I was to take one pure glass of water and drop oil in it, is that water still pure? It's not. See, the smallest things already can get to our heart and already put the impurities in our life. The question is, how do we stop those impurities and how do we see the difference? Because that's the hardest part of our Christian journey, if I can be honest with you. It's hard to be a Christian, isn't it? I mean, literally around this entire world, it's the hardest time. I mean, just take instance this whole week of everything that's come down this week. You've had different sides screaming at each other. You've had different opinions coming at each other. You have hatred. You have everything flying at each other. And the things that we hear and the things that we harbor all of a sudden become the same things that we start acting that way. But there's hope. There's not an end. Jesus says this, is that if you want to be pure at heart, you have to go through something called a refiner's fire. And maybe you're a 90s person or you heard that song, Refiner's Fire. And I thought, what's the best way to explain this? And let me just see real quick. I worked in the oil field for 10 years in Gillette, Wyoming. And I'll tell you what, this city boy grew up very quickly in the oil field. I learned a lot, especially a lot of four-letter words. But I really learned what hard work is, and I really learned what it means to work for your money. I mean, 18, 24 hours, 26, 38-hour shifts, you worked hard. But I remember the first day I went out there, everybody knows who the greenhorn is because their hat heart's really shiny, and they have nothing on their clothes. They're completely clean, all right? And so you knew who the greenhorn was, and so you got razzed, you got picked on. I ended up buying a lot of cases of beer for things not turning the wrench the right way or something like that. But the reality is that the first day out there, I made a fool of myself, young and dumb, we were bled off the well, and we were pulling out this oil pump. And I looked at my father-in-law, thank God it was him, and I said, what is that coming off the pump? And he says, well, 1, it's water, and 2, it's oil, dummy, you know? And I thought, well, that's true. But I looked at him and I said, this is the dumbest thing I've ever said. I said, well, that doesn't look like the oil I put in my car. And he says, come here. He says, take your glove off and touch this. And I touched this oil, and it was black. At this time, there's green oil and brown oil. They're all used for different things. But as I was feeling that oil, I could feel the grit, the sand, the dirt that was in that oil. Isn't that the same way our heart is? The impurities in that oil are also the impurities we have in our hearts. And when the oil is sent, it goes through these pipes to the tank, and the tank drains it into the truck, and the truck takes it to the rail yards or to the semis or wherever it goes to the refinery. And at the refinery, the gas that hasn't been burned off at the well is burned off at the refinery. And it goes through this process many times that goes through all these different screens to get all the impurities out so that it can be refined into gas, into oil, into the oil that they use for the asphalt. Wherever that's being used, it's refined many times to get the impurities out of it so that you can put it safely in your car. And that's the same way with our hearts. If we're searching to be pure at heart, the thing that we have to go through is a refiner's fire. God has to clean out our hearts. And let me tell you this, it's not a fun journey. You see things that you never wanted to see about yourself. Things come out that you've been trying to hide. But if you're seriously about being pure at heart, God has to clean this out for him to be using you. Because we have to be refined first to have a pure heart. Because if you want a pure heart, you have to go through that. And it's not just a cycle that takes one time. It's a step that takes over and over again. Each test gets hotter and hotter as God cleans this out. But I can tell you the truth. Once he cleans this out, it's the most amazing thing in this entire world. Job went through the same process in 23:10. He says this, but he knows where I am going, and when he tests me, I will come out pure as gold. When we go through a refiner's process, we don't come out just mediocre or this. You come out as good as gold. You are as precious as gold. If you know the price of gold right now, it's worth a lot, right? You come out looking just like that. You come out looking like this nice new gold piece bar, right? Because you've gone through the test that it took. But the test wasn't easy. And that's where a lot of us give up very quickly because it's hard. Life is hard. It's not fun to see the person you become with the impurities in your heart, trust me. I hated seeing what I was being dragged out of me. When I told God, I'm ready to be refined, I'm ready to be used by you, boy, he cleaned out a lot. There were things that were deep in my heart that I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want anybody to see. I didn't want that label put on me. But I can tell you this, the person that came out of that refiner's fire is a whole great person. I mean, they nicknamed me here Mr. Salty, but that was like 6 times Mr. Salty before I was refined. But it took that process. The question is, you're asking this, if I want to be used by God, number one, have you checked your heart? Have you checked where you need to be cleaned out? Because God can't use you somewhere until you are completely cleaned out and pure for him to be using. Because how is he going to use an impure person when you still have hatred about a person? Or that you don't like somebody because this is what they said, or you don't like the side they took on a decision. God can't use you when the impurities are there, but he can use when he cleans it out. The question this morning is this: are you really to be ready to be refined by him? Because he's ready for you. But you have to be ready to go through the test. Because once you go through the test, your pure heart, all a pure heart wants to do is live to serve God. Because when your focus and your thoughts, all your thoughts have changed from me to him. Because you don't care about anything else except serving what God has put you in place to do. He's put us in a spot that we can know what is right and wrong. We know the truth and not the truth. And he says this in 2 Timothy 2:22. He says this: run from anything that stimulates youthful lusts. Instead, pursue righteous living, faithfulness, love, and peace. Enjoy the companionship of those who call on the Lord with pure hearts. When you have a pure heart, you automatically knew what's the things that contaminated your heart, and you immediately run from them. The things that I was involved in, the things that I would do to make my heart impure, are the things that I avoid now. And if I don't avoid them and I let a little bit come into me, a little bit more comes in. And a little bit more comes in. I have to go again through that refining process. But the minute we let a little bit in, the more it's going to affect us. And so he says that when you have a pure heart, you run from that and you run to love. You run to a righteous living. You run to faithfulness. You run to the things that are good. And the greatest thing that he says there is the last part of it: you run to companionship of the people who are in the same mindset. The same people who are seeking to be pure at heart, you seek them out. You're not running to people who are hurting you. One of the greatest stories in the Bible that I love is found in Daniel. And Daniel, in the middle of the night, he's dragged and knocked on the door, and he says, congratulations, you and your friends are going to be killed tonight because no one could interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And Daniel goes, well, hold up a second, man. Do I get a chance, or is this just already decided? And they said, fine, you have till morning. And Daniel has an opportunity to run away. He has an opportunity to get away as fast as he can. But instead, because where his heart was and where his mind was set and where his pure heart was, he immediately ran to his friends. And instead of his friends saying, this is impossible, we can't do this, let's get our bags packed, let's get a head start as fast as we can, instead, they dropped to their knees. And they started saying, God, reveal the dream to us tonight. Because when we're pure at heart, we find the people that are the same way, the people that build us up and tear us down. Because if we don't get the people out of our life who are contaminating us, all they're going to do is keep contaminating us and contaminating us. We have to seek companionship of the same mind. When COVID shut down the church, it destroyed fellowship. Everybody thought, I can get everything I can from church online. It was great. You drink your coffee, you eat your breakfast, you work out, you watch church on your time, right? But the one thing that people ended up lacking was fellowship. The one thing that people ended up missing, they didn't realize how much the fellowship impacted their life, and that the fellowship helped them build a better life. Because the reality is this: we were not made to do life on our own, because it's impossible. I guarantee you, everybody in this room can tell you, when you've done life on your own, it probably hasn't ended up in the best situation. But when you rely on God and you surround yourself with people that help you, it changes the whole game. You have a support system. You have people who are watching you. You have people who are guiding you. You have people who are filling you up with great things. And all you want to do is keep serving God, because the more you're getting filled up, the more you're putting out. Because the reality is this: a pure heart lives to serve God. But you should be careful about this because he says this in James that it can be also a different reasoning. Because when you're serving God and you're fully in God, a pure heart is solely in love with Christ. It's solely sold out for God. And when I think of that, I always think of the DC Talk song called Jesus Freak and how people will label me a Jesus freak. And you know what? When you're pure at heart, that's the greatest compliment somebody could give you. Because you're doing it not for yourself, but you're doing it for him. But he warns us too, though. Because when we dabble in this, a lot of times people start seeing different sides of us and people start giving us compliments. And the world that we live in, compliments are great, aren't they? We all want to be boasted about. We all want to feel good. We all want words of encouragement. But we have to be careful that those words don't take over our life. Because when you become pure at heart, you start praying more. You start seeking people out. You start praying for people more. You start helping people more. You start doing different things, and people see a different change in you. And a lot of times they say, well, you're a great prayer. You're this, you're that. And a lot of times you preach the paint off the walls. That's not one I've ever heard, so I don't have to worry about that one. But the reality is this person down here wants to destroy your pure at heart with those compliments. Because now it's about you and not about him. And we live in a world that tells us everything's about us. Do what feels good for you. Do what's right for you. Who cares about the other person? Survival of the fittest, right? But if I help you, what am I going to get out of it? See, our world tells us that. And we start giving out, instead of our pure heart starts changing back to what it is. And he says this in James 14-16. He says, but if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not of God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For whoever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. Basically, he's saying this, that when you are doing this stuff and you're self-centered and you're doing this only for your accolades because you've become so great at this or so great at that, you are no better than the Pharisees were. And if you know anything about a Pharisee, they were the people who thought they were the top dogs. They wear the nicest clothes. They wore prayer boxes on their arms. They said, look how spiritual I am. Look how long I prayed for. Look how much money I gave to the church. Look at me, look at me. But on the inside, they were lying. They were jealous of other people. They were deceitful because it was all about them and the way they looked. So we have to be careful when we become pure at heart, because sometimes the devil is sitting there waiting for us saying, come on, say a compliment to them. Doesn't that compliment feel good? You keep getting them. And each time our pure heart starts getting impure again, because we're not sold out for him, we're sold out for ourselves. But he says this in 17, but the wisdom from above is first all pure. It also peace, loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. When you're fully in this pure heart, you know what is right. You know what is wrong. You know when someone tries to change this book right here to benefit culture, you understand the false preachers. You understand the people that are only in it for this. Because the wisdom that you receive from God is the wisdom that is greater than this earth can fully understand. Because it's a love that is not like any other love in this world. It's a peace that's like no other peace in this world. It doesn't have any conflict. It's a peace that this world has never seen. It's a journey. It's a thing that we put other people first. Instead of putting ourselves first, we put other people first. And people go, what's your game? No, I don't have a game. I'm putting you above me because that's what Jesus has asked me to do. It's a peace, it's a love, it's a life that we see things through Jesus' eyes that we've never seen before. Because when you're pure at heart, you're in his heart. You see how he sees life. You see how he sees precious life is. He sees how great this person is that you may not like, but yet you see them in a whole new way. There's an old Christian song that says, give me your eyes for just 1 second. Give me your eyes so I can see. When we're pure at heart, we see everything that Jesus sees. And we get this blessing called this wisdom that only comes from one person, and that's the Lord. And it's a blessing and a wisdom that the world will never understand until you become pure at heart. And the greatest thing of this wisdom is this, is it bears fruit. It bears that patience that I don't have a lot of times. It bears that gentleness, that self-control, that faithfulness. I have to remember all these. I teach 4th and 5th graders all these too, right? Peace, love, joy, patience, kindness, forgiveness, self-control, gentleness. Thank you. See, y'all good. But it bears this fruit that the world sees and says, I want that. And once you've tasted it, that's all you want to taste again. Because it's the greatest fruit that you will ever taste. It's the greatest thing that you can ever do. And because you have that pure heart, you are completely sold out for him and him only. Because if you want to be used, God desires a pure heart first. God desires a pure heart for us to be used. The question that you have to ask this morning and the question that you have to define is this. Number one, am I willing to go through that fire? Am I willing to go through that pain, that suffering, that stuff that I don't want people to see? Are you willing to be refined? Because it needs to be done first to be used by him, number one. And two, you have to be cleaned out to become pure. Just like that oil, they have to clear the impurities out. We have to clean out the impurities of our heart. Second thing is this, is that when we have a pure heart, we want nothing to do but serve God. Nothing to do except just serve him and continue to follow him and do whatever he asks, because we are fully sold out for him, because we are now seeing the world in his eyes. But we have to be the first thing we have to do is we have to be willing to do what it takes. And we have to fit the stamina to fit through this whole process, because it's not going to go light. It's not going to go easy. It takes a while. And we have to grind through the times. We have to stay steady with him. When we have a pure heart, we can celebrate in the things that happen this week. We can see the things that God is doing. We can see everything through his eyes in a whole new world. We can see where the hurt is that we can touch. We'll see where the impacts of decisions make that we need to step up as a church and go out and do. We see the areas that God has given us the opportunity to do. And when we're pure at heart, he gives us a ride of our life. That when you will grab that handle and hang on, it's going to be the best ride of your life. Because I can tell you from a personal experience, I had to be cleaned out. And I don't know why. I didn't know why I needed to be cleaned out, but I learned that I had to be cleaned out for this moment right here. This moment in life that I never even dreamed that God would put me at. I never dreamed that this would be my career. I really didn't. But because I was willing to go through that pain and suffering of a refiner's process, I came out as clean as gold, looking as good as gold. And I'm not a great person, don't think that. But what I'm here at this moment and where God has placed me is a golden moment in my life. It's an opportunity that I never dreamed that would be given to me. But for me to be up here, I have to clean myself out, because if I'm no good and no better than anybody else, if I tell you what to do but don't do it, I become just a hypocrite and a Pharisee. The question is this: are you willing to seek God with a pure heart? Are you willing to have a pure heart? Because this world needs pure people in this world more than ever right now. There are people hurting. There are people upset. There are things that we as a church now have to look at and go, we got to step up here. We got to be a light. We got to be a bear fruit. We got to provide mercy than we've ever provided before. We got to bring truth. Because it's not a punishment when God refines us. He's correcting us for something amazing. The question is, are you ready for that ride? God, we thank you for this morning. Thank you for this opportunity that we've had just to reflect on your word this morning, God. God, as we search our hearts right now, God, we pray, Lord, that you show us the impurities of our life that need to be cleaned out right now, God, so that we can be used by you, God. Lord, I pray today if there's someone struggling with this, that they don't know what to do, God, that they would just come up to this altar today, God, and just say, God, clean me out. Clean me out today because I'm ready to be used by you. God, I want to serve you more than anything this morning. Show me where you want me to do this, God. Give me your eyes, give me your heart. Let me see the world in a whole new way this morning, God. Lord, use me where you need me, God, because I am willing to do whatever it takes. God, I pray that's our heart this morning, God. God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you that you didn't leave us in the grave, that you resurrected us, God, that you give us life every single day, God, that you breathe into us every single day, God, that you fill us with your love, that you fill us with your praise, that you fill us with everything we need, God, because you know what we need, Lord. So, God, I pray as we clean out our life, God, and that we become a pure heart, that we see the world through your eyes this morning, God, that we see the hurt that where we can help, that we see where we can help the people that need the help most, God. Because you're willing to use us, God. Put them in our way this morning, God, as we go out this way. Lord, we are here in our posture with our hands out, ready to receive what you have for us this morning, God. Lord, fill us this morning with what you have for us, God. God, fill us this morning. Speak to us, God. Fill us, God. We love you.